Welcome to OA Week 2024. We're going to get started in just a moment. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us for OA Week 2024. My name is Elise Keister, and I'm one of the GOA-ON Secretariats. I just wanted to let everybody know the session is being recorded. So OA Week is presented by 4 sponsoring organizations. First, GOA-ON, the Global Ocean Acidification Observing Network. Second, NOAA OAP, the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Ocean Acidification Program. Third, the IAEA OAICC, the International Atomic Energy Agency Ocean Acidification International Coordination Center. And last but not least, the IOC UNESCO, the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission of the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. GOA-ON was established in 2012 and with just a handful of members. Since then, GOA-ON has grown immensely and now has over 1,200 members from 114 countries. GOA-ON consists of several regional hubs, which span across continents as well as oceanographic regions. And we've heard from most of them throughout OA Week. And if you are not a member yet, we encourage you to go ahead and join GOA-ON, going to goon.org to become a member. So OA Week debuted in 2020 and then returned in 2021 when events and conferences were postponed due to the 2019 pandemic. Following the successful in-person symposium on the ocean and a high CO2 world in 2022 and another successful OA Week in 2023, GOA-ON decided to bring back OA Week 2024 to maintain the momentum around OA research and provide a virtual platform for the ocean acidification community to exchange their latest findings. So we are thrilled to present a wide range of ocean acidification topics and speakers from around the world. This is our last session of OA Week 2024, and it's been a really great week so far. And this is going to be a discussion-based session, so we're going to encourage all, audience participation. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Austin, who's going to be the moderator for today's session.
Thank you, Elise. Good morning, afternoon, evening, night, for wherever you are in the world right now. Thank you all for coming to the ICONEC session. To kick us off today, we're going to do a brief update on some things that came out of the ICONEC network before moving into our panelists, who will all talk about where they are today and a little bit about their experience to help set this stage for this discussion about different career paths that you can take as an early career in the marine carbon world. After that, we're going to move into questions that we have planned for this session for our panelists before opening up the floor to all of you in the audience to ask questions to all of our panelists. To dive right into the ICONEC network updates, I want to pop in the chat this survey. So if you're an ICONEC member, or if you're planning on being an ICONEC member, we're asking you to fill out this survey because it's doing a couple of things. It is going to be setting our meeting schedule for the next year. So you can make sure that you will have meeting schedules that you can attend. These meetings will rotate between the Americas time zone, the Europe-Africa time zone, and then the Eastern Asia Pacific Islands time zone. Each will be led by one of our 3 co-leads, myself, Falilu, and Amy, respectively. We'll be leading those kind of in a cycle throughout the year. Also on that form is two of the other updates. One is talking about the perspectives paper. As some of you may know, we are in the final stages of publishing a perspectives paper as a project has come out of ICONEC. And there is a second perspectives paper that we're assembling an authorship team for. And this perspectives paper focuses on ECOP's perspectives of MCDR efforts in the Global South. The entire authorship of that paper we're hoping will be from the Global South. Meanwhile, we will be, for our Global North members, we will be picking a different topic to be writing a different perspectives paper about. So when you're filling out that form, there's a question that asks if you'd like to be part of a perspectives paper. If you would, and you're from the Global South, we'll put you on the authorship email list for that MCDR paper. And if you're from the Global North, you should be receiving an email within the next couple of weeks to help us focus in and pick a topic for that next perspectives paper. The other question that's on that form is asking about ICONEC leadership. So for those of you who don't know, ICONEC is now 2 years old, which is crazy to me to hear. And that our anniversary was on Monday. Now that means that most of our leadership is going to start terming out, and we want to have a smooth transition. So over the next year, we're polling our membership to see who's interested in getting involved in ICONEC leadership. It's a great opportunity to plug into the leadership of other hubs, as well as build your network of peers and people that have been in this field for a long time. So I would encourage you, if you are interested at all, to select yes on that. We can talk about what roles may be a good fit for you. The final thing I want to touch on, as you might know if you're part of our Slack or on our email list, we are planning a data submission retreat. And the idea is for all of us to put aside time on our calendar to submit this data from our projects that have been sitting on shelves, or maybe you don't know how to do it and this is your first time, to put that time aside and submit it all together as a group with experts in the room who are integral to these data repositories, and they will give talks during this session. Originally, this was supposed to take place on Monday. However, due to some capacity issues, we had to delay that, and we're aiming for a date in the new year. Because of how crazy January always is, we're looking at early March. So just a heads up that was changed, but it is still coming. And if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Patrick Duke, who's on this call, because we're tag teaming this. Those are all the ICONEC network updates. If you have questions about them, feel free to pop them in the chat and I can answer them as the rest of the session goes on. But I want to dive in and start having some of these wonderful discussions. Elise, could we go to the next slide, please? Awesome. So this part of the session, we're going to go through all of our panelists. We're going to give a brief introduction for who we are and how we got to where we are. So to set the stage, hello, everyone. My name is Austin Pugh. I'm the Climate and Ecosystem Coordinator at the Northeast Regional Association of Coastal Ocean Observing Systems, or NERACOOS. It's the only time I'm going to say the full thing because it's a mouthful. And essentially, my job is to identify areas of cross-cutting themes within our ocean observing system in the Northeast US and try and figure out how we can bring them together. Pertinent to today, though, within my role as Climate and Ecosystem Coordinator, I am the NECAN coordinator, or the Northeast Coastal Acidification Networks, one of the regional CANs that's all around the coasts of the US, as well as I'm the community manager for the Ocean Acidification Information Exchange, which if you're not part of that, you should definitely join it. It's a great forum for discussion about ocean acidification. Elise, do you mind moving to the next slide, please? So my background is a little bit different than a lot of people I know in the ocean space, because I did not start with an interest specifically in the ocean. I started with an interest in rocks. I have a degree in paleontology, and I went to my undergrad thinking I would do vertebrate paleontology and study dinosaurs. The first picture down on the bottom right there is me actually digging up the hip bone of a Hadrosaurus, or a duck-billed dinosaur. But then I quickly realized that dinosaurs aren't that old in deep time, and I started studying more shells, organisms in fossil record, going back 500, 400 million years old. You can see a bunch of them laid out on a table there. Every time I went to a field school, I would bring home about 20 pounds of rocks. And that got me into trying to figure out how these organisms in the fossil record would act when they were living, and doing projects where I would 3D print some of these fossils in the correct shell material and run water through them. So you can see that very young picture of me without a beard, running a recirculating flume to try and figure out the feeding optimization for the gape of certain fossil organisms. But to understand the past, we need to understand the present. So I started doing modern day biological surveys and things like that, volunteering and getting summer internships for that, to do these biological surveys on modern organisms. And once I did that, there was no going back. And I got very interested in this question of ocean acidification and how it could impact organisms, both in the distant past, because CO2 levels were much, much higher in different periods of Earth's history, which presumably would mean that the ocean would be more acidic. But it's a very difficult thing to study in the fossil record. So I started studying in the modern to try and understand it in the past, and never really went back after that. So from there, fresh out of university, I got a job as the coordinator for Canada's Ocean Acidification Community of Practice. And the way I did this was through my own internal network. I was pointed towards this position, and it was a good fit for me because I really enjoy people, working with people and coordinating people. Unfortunately, that position ran out of funding just about 2 years ago. And at that point, I had to look for a new career, where I was then pointed by a different colleague towards NERACOOS, because they were hiring for the Ocean Acidification Information Exchange community manager, as well as a CAN coordinator. And that brought me to NERACOOS, where I'm in my current role today. And throughout these final two, the other thing I wanted to point out was I am one of the co-leads for ICONEC, as I mentioned up top. So every week I do spend some of my brain time thinking about ICONEC and where we fit as a network. Elise, could you hit forward on the slides, please? So that's me there. Oh, go back. Oh. Anyway, so I that is the other big part of what I do on a daily basis, is thinking about ICONEC as a whole. And that I cannot claim at all was something that was driven by solely me. It was very much a community effort, many of whom are panelists today. Little backstory on me, and I am going to pass the mic along to Falilu.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Falilu, and I'm a researcher at the Institute of Oceanography, the Nigerian Institute of Oceanography in Nigeria. Basically, my research work journey has been about a decade ago since I started my job at the Institute of Oceanography. Basically, my foundation, I started with fisheries in my first degree. So where I basically did some sort of, let me say, kind of ecophysiology, where I used fish specimens to study the environmental pollution and stuff like that. So with that interest, I decided to go on for a master's degree in pollution studies and management. that I did at the University of Lagos, and before joining the Institute for Oceanography sometimes in 2013, and then at the Institute of Oceanography, I am in the department for physical and chemical oceanography. So there I was interested. I look at areas of coastal nutrient and cycles, looked at areas of pollution management in the coastal waters of Lagos, being that Lagos is quite a populous city. So the coastal lagoon, which is the Lagos Lagoon, offers a lot of ecosystem services. So it is very important to study the level of pollution in that particular water body. So I did a lot of work in the environment. So in 2015, I got interested in looking at acidification, for example, to understand what is this concept of acidification. So there I was part of the first set of early career professionals that were in Cape Town for the training, the first ever training on ocean acidification in Africa. So there I received training on the basics of ocean acidification. So coming back home, I developed the interest in looking at acidification and its impact on the marine ecosystem. So I sojourned for a PhD in marine biology. So where I'm looking at the impact of carbon chemistry on marine calcifiers, specifically phytoplankton, that is coccolithophores, so off the coastal waters of Lagos. So this I have been in for some time, and it's really been a lot of exposure that I've received in this area. Also, I have also been part of kind of a network on that is ocean acidification observing, that is the OA Africa, where I played a role as member of the steering committee for the regional hub, which is a regional hub for the Global Ocean Observation Network, GOA-ON. So so far so good. It's been quite a lot of experience and journey for me. As part of my interest in ocean acidification studies, I was part of a cruise in August on board the part of the EAF Nansen program. So I was on board the Bridge of Nansen to carry out acidification studies in the Benguela opening system that is in Namibia. So basically these are my experience so far so good in the future. This is my story of so far so good in some early career scientist. Thank you.
Thank you, Falilu. So you've heard from myself, who is the co-lead for the Americas, Falilu, who's the co-lead for Europe and Africa, and now I'm going to pass it over to our Eastern Asia and Pacific Islands co-lead, Amy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Markel. Can you hear me? Yes, okay, great. I'm a PhD student in the Department of Oceanography at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. And I have recently become the co-lead. I just started this, so I'm just working my way into what it looks like to be an ICONEC co-lead. Can you hit the next slide? So to give you a little background of how I got here today, we have to go back quite a bit. I was actually a high school intern through the Saturday Academy in Oregon with the Happel Lab at Oregon State University, where one of their graduate students was a research scuba diver studying rockfish recruitment. It amazed me at the time that you could scuba dive for work. So I started volunteering at the Oregon Coast Aquarium as a volunteer diver, cleaning the tanks and giving occasional underwater presentations to the visitors. You can see that picture on the left side there on the top. And I started the scientific diver course there, but I was curious about other ocean ecosystems besides temperate waters and wanted to know more about coral reefs and other warm water ecosystems. After that, I was accepted to the National Student Exchange Program, and I exchanged to the University of Hawaii at Hilo, where I finished my scientific diver training and completed their quantitative underwater ecological survey techniques course, as well as completing my bachelor's and a double major in marine science and biology with a concentration in ecology, evolution, and conservation. My undergraduate thesis up there on the top right focused on an endemic species of soft coral and differences in their morphology with changes in water quality conditions around the island of Hawaii. Also during my undergraduate, I was part of the NOAA Hauling Scholarship Program and completed an internship in Seattle at the Northwest Fisheries Science Center. You can see the picture of all of us hauling undergrads in the middle and the top there. Also, while I was at UH Hilo, I did a study abroad program called Semester at Sea, where I traveled to 12 different countries in the span of 4 months. After I graduated from UH Hilo, I moved to the island of Kauai for a job leading eco snorkel tours in front of what was the St. Regis in Princeville, and now called the One Hotel. That's down in the leftmost bottom corner photo. And then after that, I took an internship program with the Department of Forestry and Wildlife Natural Area Reserve System at Hikikinau, which was in South Maui. So I moved islands yet again. Ahikinau is a unique area in both that it has marine and land protected resources within its reserve boundaries. It's one of the most recent lava flows on Maui and hosts some of the most pristine alkaline ponds, which is a unique ecosystem in the world. After that, I took a temporary position with UH Maui College as a recruiter for Kaho'olawe Island Reserve Commission internship program called Hui Kape'e, which was for Native Hawaiian students. That's the next picture kind of in the middle on the bottom. And as part of the internship program, these students received career and technical training, and they came on access trips to Kaho'olawe, which was a previous site of US Navy bombing. And it's been since returned to the state until it can be transferred to a Native Hawaiian entity to manage. And the students went there for cultural and restoration work. After that position ended, since it was a temporary one, I moved to Honolulu on Oahu and was at the University of Hawaii at Manoa for my master's program in natural resources and environmental management, which incorporates science, conservation, community work, and management. So that is the right side middle photo. My master's used macroalgae as a way to look at nearshore pollution along the coastline of the North Shore of Kauai. The method I used, stable isotope analysis, could be modified to incorporate community members. And I did find some areas along the coastline that had signatures from macroalgae that indicated there were leakages from cesspools in the area. After graduating from UH Manoa, I was accepted as part of the inaugural E. Gordon Grau Coastal and Marine Management Fellowship with Hawaii Sea Grant, where I was placed with the Division of Aquatic Resources, which is within the Department of Land and Natural Resources within the state of Hawaii. They had me working on 2 different projects as lead planner for the State of Hawaii Ocean Acidification Action Plan, which you can see in the bottom right there, and as a mapping and public hearing planning assistant for the Holomua Marine Management Program, which was previously part of the 30 by 30 efforts. After finishing the Grau Fellowship, I accepted a PhD offer with Dr. Christopher Sabine at the University of Hawaii at Manoa in the Oceanography department. We were colleagues when I was working on the OA action plan for the state, and I was able to help complete one of the state's action items from the plan as a student with Chris, which was expanding our data coverage for the Hawaiian archipelago. If you could go to the next slide. I currently work with Dr. Christopher Sabine on two major projects. One was the 8-month mission of autonomous surface vehicles, sail drone, you can see on the right side, to capture spatial data around the islands. I also had the opportunity to help deploy 3 new moored autonomous partial pressure of CO2 buoys, also known as MAP CO2 buoys, on the islands of Kauai, Maui, and Hawaii, due to my previous experience living there and working with those communities. Previously, Hawaii had 4 of these buoys around only the island of Oahu. So this effort worked to add a few new ones to spread out data across the archipelago. I worked in partnership with my previous coworkers at the Division of Aquatic Resources to co-locate these buoys with long-term coral reef monitoring sites. And that's it for me for now.
Thank you, Amy. I'm going to pass the mic along to Patrick. Before I do, I just want to give everyone a quick reminder. If you have any questions about the methods we all took to get to where we are today, myself being programmatic, a couple others being academic or industry, please pop them in the chat and we can answer them directly after this introductory session. Thank you. Take it away, Patrick.
Thanks, Austin. Thanks, Falilu and Amy as well for the intros. Everybody else had nice photos. I just got this one slide, so ride this out with me. But I just finished my PhD in May of this past year, and I just started a new job this fall with CarbonRun, working on river alkalinity enhancement for carbon dioxide removal. I sort of lead the monitoring, reporting, and verification efforts at CarbonRun for the measurement side, so sensing, sensor technology, any discrete samples that we're taking to evaluate those sensors, and sort of reporting that way, setting baselines, that type of stuff, and also the sort of engagement community side with stakeholders and rights holders around potential partnerships, and sort of growing the industry that way, and sort of public awareness campaigns. That QR code that is on the screen, it's a link if you guys haven't heard of CarbonRun or what's happening in sort of this carbon dioxide removal space. This is a link to the Frontier offtake, which was a pretty big announcement for the company this fall of sort of $25 million US for purchasing carbon credits. So it's kind of an exciting time to plug into the space. And it's also really nice to see some familiar faces in the webinar that helped get me here. Mallory Ringham at AbCarbon, really appreciative to her and the network that, you know, this is a resource that was super helpful of asking peers, you know, how can I end up in an industry position with the background that I have, and sort of mimicking the templates that they've sort of laid out that are all sort of in our cohort or a couple years ahead of me, that really sort of paved this way. So I think that's sort of the power of ICONEC and the intention that we all sort of set out to do. So it's really exciting that I ended up here with that network. So my background was mostly in Arctic ocean science and ocean acidification research, using autonomous sensor platforms to measure pH, PCO2 during year-long deployments under sea ice. So pretty harsh deployments for some of these sensors in some new environments. And from there, in my PhD at the University of Victoria, which I just wrapped up, I was using machine learning to integrate those observations and make sort of larger scale projections of carbon dioxide fluxes in the Northeast Pacific and ocean acidification trends from there. So all of that sort of academic experience really, I think, did translate well into sort of an industry role. And again, it's only been 3 months for me here. But it's been an interesting transition as far as pace and everything else that maybe isn't as expected, or we're definitely not as used to in the academic environment. But I'm happy to answer questions on that and get a little deeper, but I'll pass it along for now.
Thanks, Pat. Up next, we'll be hearing from Amanda.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Kirkland. I'm currently a Knaus Fellow for NOAA's Office of National Marine Sanctuaries. And also, I did not put this on the slide, I am still a PhD student. So trying to get through that still too. Next. So yeah, my journey, kind of similar to Austin, is not exactly fully marine. I took a bit of a winding path to get to where I am now. So I started my journey at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. So that top picture there is me doing limnology, so the study of inland waters rather than marine biology. Wisconsin is almost as far from the ocean as you can get in the US, and honestly had no marine biology classes whatsoever. They had one oceanography class, which I did take, but that was about it. So after graduating, I graduated with a degree in biological conservation and a minor in environmental studies. And ultimately, if I wanted to go into marine science, I needed to build up my lab work. I did not do lab work in college. I worked at a pizza place. So I started working as an analytical chemist at a couple of pharmaceutical companies. So PPD and Coding Place, which are those two symbols down there. And I did that for about a year and a half. And then I entered the marine realm through chemistry. So I moved to be an unpaid intern. Love the unpaid internships that marine biology commonly starts with. I was an unpaid intern at Moat Marine Laboratory with their ocean acidification program down in the Keys. And I was working with them to find the most resistant strands of coral to ocean acidification so that their restoration team could focus on propagating those corals for outplanting. So I could only remain an unpaid intern for so long. From there, I only stayed there for 3 months, and then got a job teaching. So the next person that wanted to hire me was Frost Science Museum and working for their Upward Bound program. So they brought me on to teach marine science, including ocean acidification, among many other things, for the summer. And so I had moved to Miami, and while I was at Moat, I actually applied for 60 different jobs, and heard back from another one while I was teaching, which landed me with CMIS, which is the cooperative institute between University of Miami and NOAA down in Miami. So sticking with coral stuff helps them look at ways to make coral more resistant to warming through stress hardening. Next, Elise. So after that, I was able to land a PhD ship at University of New Orleans. So I now look at the effects of warming and acidification on artificial reef ecosystems. So you can see me with a couple of the critters I work on there on the left. And then I've been able to present that at international and national conferences. So where I met a lot of these folks is that top right in Peru at High CO2 World. And I've also been able to present at a congressional briefing, which was pretty cool. And I was able to do that because I was an OA fellow through NOAA and Louisiana Sea Grant. So now I'm a Knaus fellow. I sit in DC now. And ultimately, I do a lot of different things for them, but among them is sitting on a Marine CDR task force and also working with the climate team for the Marine Protected Areas Center. I will leave it there for now.
Thanks, Amanda. And to round off our panel before we open it up and we can see all of you for the Q&A, I'm going to give the microphone back to Elise.
Yes, thank you. It's great to be surrounded by so many awesome panelists and ICONEC members. So my name is Elise, as I mentioned before. So right now I am also a Knaus fellow, but I am placed within the Ocean Acidification Program. And just to give a little bit of background, so it's interesting. I had a winding path, I think, of similar to Austin and Amanda, but you know, I think a little different variety. So I am originally from Florida. So I got involved in research pretty early on. This is me presenting a talk or a poster, I guess, around archaeology while I was a student at USF. I had the opportunity to be a part of the National Science Foundation research experience for undergraduates. And I was based at Duke Marine Lab. I was looking at the diversity of a cyanobacteria in the tropical Eastern Pacific. And this was really awesome. This is the first time I was involved in a research project, kind of like from the beginning, like through the end. And it was a really great experience. I was surrounded by a lot of other students. And then I finished my bachelor's at the University of Miami. And one of the things I really loved about this program is I was able to get in the water and, collect data, come up with my own research questions pretty early on. And so I graduated. I was having a hard time. I got some advice about, if you want to get a PhD, you probably shouldn't get a master's degree because you're just going to go into debt, is really what I was told. But I went to a private institution. So, it's expensive going to private institutions, and it didn't occur to me, and I had no knowledge that master's degrees could be funded, especially at like state universities. So, anyway, I was using my network, and I ended up working for the American Tall Ship Institute as an educator, and basically had my room and board paid and also had food paid. And that was a really big learning opportunity. And I didn't actually get to go out on the water. We had a bunch of ship issues, but it was, we grew together as a crew. I also had a summer of working on a ship and maintaining a ship, which was, I don't know, very character building. And then from there, I ended up getting a job working at NOAA, the Southeast Fisheries Science Center, in a larval fish lab. And this is just a shot of a larval fish that just consumed another larval fish. So I got to process a bunch of samples. This is following the deep water horizon oil spill. So we were a part of the effort doing the damage assessment following that big oil spill. And so at this point, I'd been working as a technician for a couple of years, and I kind of figured being a technician wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be pushing myself more, learning a lot more things, not necessarily doing the same thing every day. And I, at this point, started thinking more seriously about graduate school. And this is so funny that I didn't make this connection before, but Amanda, I was also an unpaid intern at Mote Marine Lab in the ocean acidification program. I have to figure out what years we were there. But so I helped maintain, so that I was also based in Summerland Key, helped with kind of maintaining their OA systems and monitoring it. Here is a sheet where I would fill out the pH and temperature and salinity measurements that we would take, throughout the day. And basically, at this point, I was trying to get as much experience as possible working with corals because I couldn't find a paid job working with reef building corals. It was very challenging. But luckily, this, opportunity really paid off, and I ended up getting meeting my advisor for my PhD. So I did my PhD at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, and I looked at resilience mechanisms of different reef building corals. So I worked both in the Florida Keys as well as in Palau, which is a small republic nation in the Pacific. And so I was funded through the Dr. Nancy Foster Scholarship Program for my work based in the Florida Keys, which this was a really wonderful opportunity. It funded me as a student. And then I also got to connect with a bunch of other scholars that were working in other national marine sanctuaries across the US, which was great. Highly recommend that if anyone is looking into doing a PhD and would like to talk a little bit more about the scholarship. Please, email me, reach out. I'd love to talk and give you some advice about applying for the program. And through that program, I got to go back to this passion I really have for doing education work. So I got to go to the National Marine Sanctuary of American Samoa and work with a team of people, including an intern who had just graduated from college, a local teacher, and we actually worked on developing a curricula around how climate change is impacting American Samoa. And we were able to put together hands-on activities and really hand over lesson plans to local teachers so they felt empowered to actually teach how climate change is impacting American Samoa, actually in their classroom. And then, so that brings me up to today. So, so I'm working as the International Policy Fellow within the Ocean Acidification Program. And one of the hats that I wear is as the GOA-ON Secretariat. So I'm kind of the focal point for a couple different regional hubs, as well as ICONEC. So kind of providing that linkage to GOA-ON as a bigger organization. And I think I'm gonna leave it there as well.
Thanks, Elise. We're now going to move into our Q&A session. So I think Elise is going to try and get all of you up on the screen to have an easier flowing conversation. In the meantime, while she does that, we do have a question from the audience, which is for Elise and Amanda. But as Elise figures it out, Amanda, I'm going to call on you to do this. Can you quickly explain to the international audience what a Knaus Fellow is and what your day-to-day role involves?
Yeah, so the Knaus Fellowship is meant for, well, it's supposed to be for people who have recently graduated. I cheated a little bit, to be fair. So for both masters and PhDs, and basically it puts them into roles. So we have some ledge, most of them are put in the executive branch. So Elise and I are both with NOAA. There's people with US Fish and Wildlife, Department of Interior, all sorts of positions. A lot of us end up with certain programs in NOAA. And essentially it's a one-year fellowship that gives you experience on the policy side of science, basically. So the intersection of science and policy. After it, you get a direct hire authority, which is really nice. So it makes it a lot easier to get hired into like the federal government, which is partly why a lot of people do it. But also a lot of people stick around in the positions that they're in. Elise, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I think you really covered it. One thing I just want to highlight is when you apply to be a Knaus Fellow, you have to be a student, which is, I think the applications are due in February. And I just highlight that because I actually had a friend who was a finalist, and then they found out she wasn't a student in February. She had graduated in December, and so then she was no longer a finalist. So just from a logistics standpoint, to really facilitate the conversation, I'm inviting people to be panelists. And so what that does is that'll allow you to turn your camera on. If that is something you're not comfortable with, feel free to decline that invitation. But I think I've gotten through about 4 of you so far.
Awesome. And yeah, everyone can be a panelist. There's a wealth of knowledge in this chat that I can see. Natalie raised her hand. So Natalie has a question. Natalie, you can speak. Natalie, can you hear us? Oh. Okay, Natalie's hand's down. So Natalie, if you have a question, put it up again. In the meantime, to our panelists, while we're waiting for other questions to come in, I'd like to throw this out and answer it. Think about it as you need. But what advice would you give to others who are interested in pursuing your job? Start us off.
Yeah, I can jump in because maybe mine's slightly different, but I think it was honestly networking. I know, like, yeah, in government jobs and across academic jobs, I think this is underrated as well, because I think it is the same to a certain extent, apart from maybe like faculty roles that go through a pretty rigorous evaluation. But for industry side, it really was getting outside of the usual sort of academic circles for the networking that I was doing, and like sort of building a face, particularly in like sustainability circles. Globe Conference is a big one in Canada, but I'm sure there's equivalents sort of in other countries where it's not an academic style conference. It's very much an industry style conference. And I made a point of trying to attend that as frequently as I could throughout my degree. But yeah, I think that was a big step. And then actually I got this job because of somebody I know that was on staff that got hired just before me that vouched for me. So that was super helpful. So that networking component was huge.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Pat.
and oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Amanda. I was
I was
throw
just
some
gonna echo that. Yeah, because honestly, almost every job I've gotten is because the previous person that is hiring me knew someone I worked for previously. So definitely networking, and even now in the federal government with like our direct hire authorities, those can be put into effect through only like knowing people that want to hire you. But secondly, I would also put in there cultivate diverse experiences. Like take any opportunity you possibly can. I always like to say I like to have my fingers in as many things as possible, and you never know what opportunities are going to come out of that. And ultimately, when you're looking at roles, when you can say, hey, yeah, I worked on a budget for this random thing. They're like, great, I need you to do budget work for this new role. And it just honestly, now I'm like looking at jobs and there's a ton of things that need both laboratory and field and budget and policy and all of these things. So being able to be like, I have an example of where I worked on every single one of those things is super awesome.
Thanks, Amanda. Falilu, I'd be interested in your answer to this question, as most of us on this panel are within North America. So I'd like to hear your perspective coming from Africa. Falilu, you're on mute.
Okay.
Falilu, you're on mute again.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
You hear me now? Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you. I will say that this is a very important and interesting topic to discuss about. Coming from the global south, that's a developing country, as an early career professional in ocean sciences. I don't know how to start, I started with fisheries, so but somehow I just felt that I love to do ocean sciences. I love to do marine sciences, So that made me to move to university. First of all, the challenge is that in developing countries, there are limited opportunities for institutions that run ocean sciences, courses in ocean sciences. For example, there in Nigeria here, I can just make mention of a few, maybe less than 2 universities or 3 universities that offers courses in marine sciences, for instance. So that makes it pretty challenging to come into the field. There's a whole lot of what I would call challenges and bottlenecks which are there to come into the ocean sciences, but somehow, luckily for me, I found myself in a government institution of which that specializes in oceanography. There are ups and downs within the system. For example, when you look at accessibility to infrastructure, for example, to carry out research, there are massive limitations, But how do I, for example, how do I manage to surmount all of these challenges? Is first of all is that you must have a kind of a connection with your environment, that is the ocean in this case now, that is the marine environment, maybe not the ocean per se, because I can tell you that just a few people have access to the ocean. For example, I live in Lagos, which is a coastal state. Nigeria has about 875, more than 800 kilometers of coastline, for example. But quite a majority of people that live in the coastal areas don't even have they don't have a direct access to the ocean per se, in terms of going to the ocean to see the ocean on a daily basis, you know. So, but somehow most of the food resources that we get comes from there. So there's a need for us to have a connection. So if you want to come into the field of ocean sciences and marine sciences in the developing countries such as ours, there's a need for you to first of all have a connection. There's a need for connection because there's a whole lot of bottlenecks. For example, there are no infrastructure, there are no access to laboratories where you can carry out analysis and stuff like this. So, but when you have that connection, then you are able to surmount whatever challenges that comes your way. I work in government, for example, where we develop and design projects, you know, for government, for example, and there are a lot of challenges that we face. But I think so far, so good. What has kept me so far is because of my connection that I think I have to sojourn, to know more about the ocean sciences. So what I would advise upcoming professionals is that they need to have a connection with the environment, so that whatever the bottlenecks they encounter, that can be able to help them to pull through, you know. For example, as a researcher, we don't have access to, we have limitations to databases, for example, you know. We have limitations to state-of-the-art or latest research that is available, you know. So these are a number of limitations that are there. But there are a lot of opportunities too that are there. For example, the job is there are opportunities to explore because a lot of people are not there, for example, and yet the country needs a lot of experts in this area. So the opportunities are there that could be explored, you know. So this is just what I can say, that though there are a lot of challenges, but at the same time, there are opportunities to explore in this in the area of ocean and marine sciences, as somebody coming from a developing world like us.
Thank you for that answer, Falilu. That was awesome. I want to open it up to any of our other panelists to answer the question, or if there's any other questions to build on either what Pat and Amanda or Falilu, what their answers were, please feel free to ask.
Okay, so which of these does not look like the other one? I am definitely not an early career person and was surprised to be asked as a panelist, but on behalf of GOA-ON. So first of all, my name is Jan Newton. I'm a co-chair of GOA-ON, and in addition to my day job, which is at the University of Washington as an oceanographer and professor there, I was really excited to join ICONEC's webinar to hear, you know, what you all are saying and thinking about. And so, first of all, thank you to the organizers of ICONEC for all the work that you're doing to bring this community together. So I would definitely say, how do you get my job? So a lot of things has changed since I was in your shoes, but I think some things remain the same. Really, you know, first of all, circuitous pathways, I think, are more the norm than the exception. And when I talk to students, you know, everybody wants the combination to the safe, right? And there is no combination to the safe, that multiple pathways will get you there. And the key is have confidence in yourself and where you want to go, because as you go on the path, if it's not right for you, you're going to figure out the pivot, right? And then if that pivot isn't quite right, you know, maybe you go back or maybe you go this way. I don't know, but you do. And even if you make a choice that isn't the right one the first time, you'll get there eventually. So do that. That's something you can do internally. I would say networking is so important. And this is one of the reasons that Steve Whitcomb, my co-chair, and I for GOA-ON were thrilled when we were approached by the ICONEC leaders. Networks are so important, and having networks of your peers is excellent, but don't also forget to join your regional hub and to be part of GOA-ON, because that's where you will meet people of varying stages. And GOA-ON is a really, you know, it's a very welcoming community. It's not, you know, it's not competitive to get into GOA-ON. You just sign up, right? And you participate, and you can go to meetings in your area. You can go to, you know, other, you know, larger scale meetings where GOA-ON has a presence, and really network and reaching out to people. And then, you know, I will be honest that cold emails might have a 50% chance of being successful. I am guilty of not answering emails when I know that I don't have an opportunity. I try to say, like, I'm sorry, nothing works for me at this point in time, but it isn't always there. But don't let that discourage you, you know. And then when you find trusted people that you think have some good insights, ask them, who else could I talk to, right? And so there was a young career scientist who drove up from Portland. I live in Seattle, and she's early in her career and just wanted to expand her network. Someone, his name was Ron Thom, at a meeting mentioned, you know, think of it as this tapestry, and you're the center of that, and you're kind of making webs, you know, so you have a line to your advisor, you have a line to your best friend in grad school, you know, but then pretty soon you're filling in all of this web, and then it's huge, and I guess that's what LinkedIn is all about. But you know, but think of it in terms of like people you can connect with to bounce off ideas. So persistence is really key too. Yeah, just being stubborn in some ways takes it, but also not being afraid to look outside of the box. And, you know, opportunities are different in different places, right? And I really appreciate, Falilu, what you said about having the connection to the environment. And I think that's so important. Somebody asked about Knaus fellowships. Unfortunately, that's just a United States opportunity, and it doesn't exist everywhere. But, you know, reaching out to people internationally and finding out where there are fellowships that can be accessible. Yeah. So anyway, stay in touch. Thank you. And I just have to say, it's an honor to be talking to you all. I'm thrilled that GOA-ON Week is ending with ICONEC, because you are our leaders and you're going to carry us forward into the future, and thrilled for your presence. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. I think that was a good summation as well. It brought together a lot of the different themes that we've been talking about so far, like the connection with the ocean, the networking piece, and then how we tie GOA-ON into that. And once again, I want to do the plug for, if you really want to get plugged into your regional hub, the ICONEC leadership's a great way to do that. So not only can you just join the network, but you can get involved with all of us. There's another question from the chat that I want to pose to our panelists, and that's, have you seen a change in the international community? It's like a community towards early careers. So I'm interpreting that as if we've observed in the last 5-10 years a change of the way that the international OA community approaches early career researchers or early career individuals. Especially with a lot of these panelists, we're late stage early career, so we've been there for a while.
Natalie, I can jump in for a sec, but like, I think Jan might have the answer here, and Jan, correct me if I'm wrong, but particularly in Canada, in the US, and in Europe, I feel like most of the heads of departments of government organizations that are doing ocean acidification work are largely like pretty established researchers, whereas it feels like there is a big push in the international community and sort of in the global south, where a lot of those researchers that are in those lead or, principal investigator positions are relatively earlier career, and there's more opportunities there as that field starts to open up.
Thank you, Patrick. That's an interesting observation, and I can definitely say that the first part is true. I don't know so much about the international scene, but what I can say is being involved in, so GOA-ON started in 2012, as Elise told us all. I was one of the people that was in the room when we formed that, right? So taking the long view of just GOA-ON itself, I don't think that we were conscientiously thinking about early career people. People took care of their students. People were very good at like, ooh, hey, student, you should come here because you'll get a lot out of this. But thinking more generically that we need to leave space on these committees for early career. We need to make sure that we're providing, opportunities. I think that absolutely has changed, and that's like, say, in 12 years. And you know why it's changed? Because you all said so. You have spoken out and said, hey, we are here, we are here. It's like, oh, what's that Dr. Seuss thing? Horton hears a who, right? Sorry if you don't know that. I shouldn't use things like that. But anyways, it's a fable about this. You can't see this little person, but this elephant actually hears this little person, and it saves the planet that he's living on. And anyways, I think the pandemic had an impact because we recognized that being able to take students to meetings and do these informal things just wasn't happening, and that we really needed to dig down. So I think that there's just a lot more attention. I think that the UN decade is really of ocean science for sustainability has been transformative too. And they have really emphasized early career professionals in that. So I feel like there has been more focus on it, but I know that it's uneven, around the globe, but we need to keep pushing. And I remember when Patrick, you were at the high CO2 with Austin, and you guys said, well, I think there should be, something for early career people. And I said, great, make it. And look what happened. Yeah.
Thanks, Jan. That is awesome to have you here to answer some of these like longer term questions. Pivoting a little bit, these questions kind of dovetail a little bit from the chat. So this is looking towards our folks on the panel that have a PhD, and that's, do you have any advice for anyone trying to finish their PhD while working? And what skills did you gain during your PhD that have been most beneficial to your current role? And I might tap Elise to start because Elise has been quiet.
That's fair. I'm gonna maybe defer to Amanda for at least finishing your PhD while, working a full-time job. I can at least say that for me, so I finished my PhD in December of last year. And I've been a Knaus Fellow, I guess, since February 1st. And luckily, with my position, I get about 20% of my time I can use for professional development, which can include like working on papers from my PhD. And I say that. And yeah, my co-authors are still waiting on a manuscript that I should have sent them, and I plan to send them back in the summer. So I think balancing finishing up wrapping up manuscripts from your PhD while you're working is hard. And trying to really set aside time, whether that's on weekends or if you have the flexibility to like use some of your working hours to do that, setting aside that time is really important. And that's something that I need to be better about as well. So definitely take it as a, I don't know, do as I say, maybe not as I do. And I'd say some of the skills, so the other question was around skills related to your PhD, right? That I'm using currently in my role. I think it's a lot of it is really the follow through of a PhD. You know, making sure you're kind of tying up those loose ends. I think no matter what, those are a bunch of skills that you're gonna carry forward into whatever role you're in. Yeah, so I'm gonna punt it to Amanda. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about finishing up your PhD while working full time.
Yes, I will echo that it is not easy. I have been trying my darndest to get it done. I had a meeting actually with someone today being like, I need this timeline to go faster than it is going. But yeah, just similar to what Elise said, make sure you carve out that time. I do add all of it to my calendar. I always say I live and die by my calendar. So every hour that I am supposed to be working on my PhD is put on my calendar ahead of time. And then I also have a lot of to-do lists. I have a color-coded to-do list for each week, and my PhD stuff goes on there along with all of my work tasks for my fellowship. So staying organized and making sure you stay on task, and also carving out that time and making sure that you stick to that time, and then leaning on your advisor as much as you can. People don't always necessarily have a very good relationship with their advisor, but if you do, really sitting down with them and looking at a timeline and realistic timeline for papers and your defense and all of those sorts of things. So yeah, biggest thing is honestly staying organized and staying on top of it. And then skills that I use in my current role that I learned in my PhD, I mean, there's a ton of them. The biggest one is project management. I, as most PhDs do, led a whole bunch of experiments and managed undergrads and a wet lab and all sorts of things. I do that now. I do a ton of projects where I'm the lead on them, or documents where I'm the lead on them. And then additionally, collaboration and partnership building. I had to collaborate with a whole bunch of people during my PhD, whether that was getting field work done. The state of Louisiana has very few scientific divers, so you kind of end up working with random people at times, but it builds relationships with, like I worked with Stennis Space Center a lot, which is a little bit random, but they don't have divers. So they had to come to the scientific divers in the state. And I do the same thing now. I collaborate with a whole bunch of different groups, including tribal and indigenous groups, including folks out at the actual sanctuaries. So yeah, those are just a couple of skills that I've been able to pull from my PhD and move forward into my career.
Thanks, Elise and Amanda. And I don't have my PhD, but I want to echo that in, I think, any career, this is something that I underestimated. The power of logistics and flexing that muscle is insanely pertinent to whatever you're doing. There's always going to be that desk work, no matter what field you're in, and being able to organize that is a great, if boring, skill to pick up. The next question that I wanted to put out to our panelists is, can you share a time that you were challenged in your career path and how you overcame that challenge? I'm going to tweak this question a little bit because I want to know if you hit what might be considered either a common challenge for a lot of early careers or an unexpected challenge that you discovered was common that you didn't know about. And I would like to hear from Amy on this one as well. So maybe I'll throw it to Amy, and then we'll open it up to our other panelists.
Sure. I was thinking about this, and I think my example I want to give is when I was an intern with the Division of Forestry and Wildlife, the pay was very low. It was more of a supplemental stipend rather than a full salary, so I was hurting financially. They did provide educational credits, so after the internship, I took a certified nursing assistant course. I was actually considering moving into medicine instead of marine science and ecology. But I learned through doing the CNA course and the practical work that medicine might not be for me, and I still wanted to pursue conservation. And after that, I actually ended up, I didn't even talk about it in my intro, but I worked 3 jobs. I was a tutor at Maui College. I worked at Starbucks as a barista, and I worked at Maui Ocean Center as an aquarist to help me recover financially. I moved on to the short-term position with Maui College and Kaho'olawe Island Reserve Commission, but that was ending because it was just a short-term gig. I was so tired of being stuck with these seasonal and short-term positions that I decided that the next step would probably be to go get a master's. And it has provided me with longer term opportunities. And I never thought I would actually go for a PhD, and here I am. So if I hadn't done that route, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today.
Thanks, Amy. That's an awesome answer to that question. Anyone else, a challenge that you've had on your path thus far that you can advise others on?
Well, I can just say, some of the early crews, they look at established people and they think, oh gosh, they must have just, had a great stepping stone and how it all worked out. And the answer is definitely no. And I think that's important to realize, because we are all human and there are so many obstacles. My PhD advisor died. That wasn't good. He had a very strange disease that cropped up when he was 50. And so somebody did the honors. I went on a postdoc, and that postdoc advisor left. And so, there were just like all these things, right? And then I did another postdoc. I came back to the University of Washington. I was born and raised in Seattle, and I really liked the Pacific Northwest. And I did interview for other jobs, but I really wanted to stay in the Northwest. And I had no opportunity at the University of Washington because I had my PhD from there, and they didn't want their own. And so I worked for a state agency for a while, and actually 10 years. And as I did that, someone said, "Oh, you're going to stop being a scientist, huh?" And it was just like, wow. I mean, it just like really made me say like, well, I'm not in academia, but I'm going to be like running their monitoring program. And it was really hurtful. And so things like that, but you got to keep believing in yourself, in what you're doing. Falilu, your words are sticking with me. Like, I still really cared about whether it was the Central Pacific Gyre or whether it was Puget Sound. I cared to understand what was going on with that water column and how carbon was flowing and all of that. And after 10 years, then I came back to the university, and I have a faculty position, but I'm actually, I don't have a teaching faculty position. It's a research position. But because ocean observing systems started, and I had all that experience with the state, I could waltz in and do this. And so I don't want to seem like I'm bragging, but I'm trying to say, like, very real obstacles will find you, and they find everybody. So it's not, thinking that maybe this isn't meant for me. No, it is. And if you want it, you will get it, and you'll figure out how to get it. Yeah, and I didn't stop being a scientist.
That's awesome, Jen. No, and to build on that, so I haven't answered this question. It's also about one of those very real obstacles, and that's as I mentioned briefly, when I was working for the Ocean Acidification Community of Practice in Canada, we ran out of funding for our program, and there was a gap that was going to be 2 years. And I thought, oh, shoot, like I've lost my chance of doing this programmatic side that I really wanted to do. And I started talking to people in my network. And it was through that network that I found that there was another position out there for me that was kind of like the next step in my career. It challenged me. I'm learning a lot. And I wouldn't have had that if I hadn't done the legwork of going out and telling people, hey, we're out of funding. Do you know of anything out there that's in like the programmatic space? And then the other thing that I want to bring up that might hit real for especially early careers today is graduating my undergrad during COVID meant that I did not attend any in-person events. I did not have a network of peers that did what I did other than those in my lab. And the way I overcame that was we heard about it a little bit at the High CO2 meeting. Pat and I attended the GOA-ON meeting, which was awesome. We felt very welcome there. But then we did the legwork, and I think I might have introduced myself to every person at that meeting. It was small, it was 150 people. But leaving that meeting, I felt like I was much more part of a network, part of a community. And the best thing to do that, if you're watching this and you don't have that community, the best thing you can do is attend an in-person event and not be afraid to go introduce yourself, because there's a bunch of people out there that are wanting to meet you as well. And that's one of the biggest takeaways you can have from these events. I want to throw it over to Falilu. He has his hand up.
Yeah. So I don't have a PhD, but I've been in the journey of my PhD journey now for quite some time. So that's, I think, because as a research scientist at the Institute of Oceanography, it's just part of the requirement for my job career progression that I have a PhD. So which means the PhD plays an integral part of my career, you understand? So I would say that the PhD itself has been my greatest hurdle, you know, because somehow I wanted to do something on acidification. And we all will agree with me that even since about it's over a decade now since GOA-ON has been in this area, trying to encourage research and what have you. But we all appreciate that, understand that doing studies on acidification is quite something on the high side when it comes to the logistics of doing so in this part of the world, in the developing world, where my samples have to be done outside the African continent. And I have, where you have limitations to funding opportunities and what have you. And then talking about supervisor, like Jan just said, I also remember losing my first supervisor. You know, I lost my first supervisor, and at that point, it seemed as if that would be the end of the road for me. Why? Because he was the one who was quite instrumental to how we're gonna surmount the logistics problem of how to carry out our research, you understand? How we could secure lab opportunities in Europe and outside Africa. You know, I lost him. So at that point in time, it was about time for me to say, no, look, I have to just go and look at something else to do. But I think how I was able to surmount that challenge, like again, I would say, is the tenacity. I just had that tenacity that, look, what I'm doing is worthwhile, because I could see, another thing is that I could see encouragement coming from a host of, a number of organizations, for example, and networks, for example, the GOA-ON to the OAICC. They gave me kind of encouragement that this organization, international organizations are there to give support. So that's why I could say, okay, at a point in time, there was opportunity for small grants by the Ocean Foundation, for instance, which I was able to access, you know. So what I will say is that the greatest challenge I have had, though I'm just a couple of months away from the PhD, but so far so good. I think the journey that I've passed through is way, way beyond the one in front of me. Because I never believed that I'll be able to find my way here in the field of acidification and carbon chemistry. And I've gone far and wide, you know. So I would encourage anyone in the developing world like us. And I'm also very much available and will be willing to encourage colleagues from the developing world to help them to see how they can surmount challenges when it comes to breaking the frontiers of research in OA and general oceanography and stuff like that. So I think tenacity is the word for me. Again, having connection to what you're doing, your interests, the enthusiasm that I love to explore what is happening in the oceans, what are the processes going on and stuff like that, you know. So then you have that tenacity when those challenges come, because like Jan said, there are a host of hurdles that will come. A host of them that will come, but you must be very determined and have that tenacity to be able to surmount them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Falilu. We have 9 minutes left, so I'm going to move into our final question, which at first might sound like a little bit of a softball question, but it's here and it's important for a very specific reason. The question is, what do you enjoy most about your career path currently? And the reason I'm putting this out there is because if you're watching this and you're still questioning which direction you want to take, I'm hoping that with the people we have on this call, we represent a lot of different career paths, and that you can hopefully get an idea of some of the best parts of each of those career paths. So I'm going to start with Amy and then pass it to Patrick.
Sure. You know, our work, there's a lot of variety in what we do. So I have some field work where I'm diving, some lab work where we're analyzing total alkalinity and DIC samples, sometimes behind the computer, writing grants and doing research, and then sometimes like this on Zoom and then in-person meetings. So I really enjoy both having mentally challenging and physically challenging work in my job, and I can't wait to see like what other things I can become a part of too. Like there's just a lot of opportunities as a PhD student to get into a lot of different projects or help assist with different research, you know, in the department or even internationally. So I like the flexibility that this has now, and I hope in my next position after I graduate, I have a balance of some of this like physical field work, lab work, computer work, because I really enjoy having the variety.
Thanks, Amy. We'll hear from Patrick and then our Knaus fellows, so Amanda and then Elise.
Thanks, Amy. I think I'm going to speak less to my day-to-day and maybe the unique opportunity that I took advantage of. I think like our cohorts is in a weird place where there's an emerging conversation at the global scale about intervention and action. And we, you know, this was not something that I wanted to do when I started this degree. I'll be clear about that. Like I was interested in research, I was interested in measuring CO2, but now I felt this like call to action, you know, 2 years out of graduating, being like, you're one of the few people in the world, let's be honest, like the number of people that we know, Jan, like in our network that can make measurements and think about the carbon system in the way that we do and be critical of it to make sure that it's real is pretty small. And, you know, I felt this need to be one of those people to actually step in and use the expertise to make sure that it is real and we're not lying to investors and the public, and making sure that carbon dioxide removal is a solution that scales and works and has community interest at heart. So I think it was like this call to action really was the drive for me, less than the day-to-day. And I think we're in a really unique spot that like the people that graduated around my time, plus minus a couple years, like those are the groups that are filling lead roles for monitoring across all of these companies and in some of the NGOs that are informing policy and regulations. And, you know, Gabby Kitch, one of our co-founders and really important people in NOAA and in the US and globally now that's leading the conversation. Like, it doesn't matter really where we plugged in, whether it was, which sector, but it all seems part of this conversation that I felt the need that we should be chiming in for.
Thanks, Pat. We're running low on time, so Amanda, Elise, and then Falilu.
Sure, I can go really quick. So my job is kind of interesting because I don't work on like ocean acidification or marine CDR like every day, all day. But I'm in a position where it's really cool because I work on like place-based management in the sanctuaries and thinking about putting in like marine CDR and how do we do that sustainably? And are sanctuaries a good place to do this? Are they good test beds or are they not? Or should we keep it out? And all of those sorts of things. I think it's really cool to be someone who is handling the management of these really beautiful, pristine, well-managed areas. I can pass it.
Yeah, so I guess as the GOA-ON Secretariat, like I'm pretty like plugged into the OA community. And I guess my background isn't as much in OA, but so I guess I'm more involved in like similar to you, Austin, like in the programmatic side, especially being like placed at OAP. And it's interesting because something I found is I've really missed doing science, like actively doing science. And I actually just accepted a postdoc, actually working with Marine Lab, doing some work with coral. So I don't know, something I've been thinking a lot about is kind of what we discussed, kind of like how your path is kind of shifting. And, I got to see this more like programmatic side, and I'm like, I'm not sure if this is for me. So I'm going to shift a little bit back to science, but who knows, I might, end up finding something that's like more in the middle. But I guess the beauty of it is you kind of get to leverage like the opportunities that are out there, and then also like use your network to like help steer, where you want to go next. Yeah.
Thanks, Elise. Falilu.
All right. So for me, there is as a researcher in my environment here, there's a whole lot of things I enjoy, ranging from doing designing, conceptualizing design projects for the institute, and implementing the project, for example, having to go to the field, collect data, come back to the laboratory and analyze data, and then getting to writing and, communicating, and then networking, there are a whole lot of things that I enjoy, including cruising too, So, which I believe, and then again, most importantly, is that you get to understand, you kind of be an advocate for the marine environment, for the oceans, especially in our own society where ocean literacy is way less than 1%, if there's anything less than that, So I see myself as one privileged person who looks forward to bringing up and then encouraging other younger ones to come join to understand the ocean world that we live in and see how we could together conserve this great resource. So for me, it's a very beautiful career that I find myself, and I'm sure that, and also I found myself also in a very good network of colleagues, which would serve as a kind of encouragement for me and younger ones. So it's a great one. I'm happy to be here in this career. Thank you all.
Thank you, Falilu. And we're right at the end of time, so I would have loved to open it up to more of the people on this call, but we'll end it with that lovely, lovely statement. Before I relinquish the mic back to Elise, though, I just want to say, if any of you have any more questions, if you're watching this after the fact on the YouTube channel, and you have questions, please reach out to us. If you're not an early career, but you know early careers, plug them into the ICONEC community. We're here to help, and we're here to lift each other up at the end of the day, as well as to help each other get involved in your home hubs of GOA-ON. So I encourage you all to do that. And then finally, we are the last session of GOA-ON OA week. So I wanted to give a big hand to the GOA-ON Secretariat on just such a successful week. I'm really happy that we got to close it out with ICONEC. Thanks. It's back to you,
Awesome.
Elise.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Austin. And we would really like to thank ICONEC and all the panelists today for, spending this hour and a half having this really wonderful conversation. And thank you for all the audience members for tuning in and asking questions. And thank you for joining us for OA Week 2024. And if you want to stay up to date with the GOA-ON community, feel free to go ahead and join as a member if you're not already. Also, we do have an open call to join the GOA-ON Executive Council, so you can scan this QR code. If you are interested, you can nominate yourself or someone else. And thank you all for your time, and another successful OA week in the books. So we'll wrap up there. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Great
Bye.
job, everybody. Great job, Austin.
Thank you, Jen.
Bye.
Bye-bye.